Souls fans around the world erupted with joy the moment we saw that mangled undead do the upside down wave into Boletaria. Sony absolutely killed their recent PS5 game show. Horizon Forbidden West looks like the hottest tropical vacation gaming has ever had. Spider-Man Miles Morales gives us the opportunity to hop back into a new web-slinger shoe so soon after the 2018 masterpiece. Untitled Cat Game promises to let wild feline fantasies play out in robotic Neo-Japan. The makers of Hyperlight Drifter tease Solar Ash, a new title with a familiar engrossing art style and soundtrack. Deathloop bringing a 1v1 competitive angle never seen before. This Wes Anderson looking thing that oozed humor and charm. We were given loads of knockout teasers that set us up to be the first in line to buy the PlayStation 5. Even if you remain skeptical, your interest in this video tells me you were at least intrigued by the Demon's Souls remake. It's no surprise. FromSoft over the last 2 generations has released hit after hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. Their growing extension of the Souls library boasts an estimated 40 million lifetime sales, enough to beat out series such as Fallout, God of War, Half-Life, and Castlevania. While sales aren't everything, this shows these critical slam dunks aren't niche titles anymore. As a wider spotlight has shined on FromSoft's work, it left a glaring beam of despair on the accessibility of Demon's Souls. With it relegated to the distant 7th generation, loads of fans that hopped on FromSoft's ship in the last decade wrote off any opportunity to play it. That's why the wiggling body floating above a kingdom caused such an uproar in the Souls community. Fans like me are giddy to give the game another go, while many who've never played it now have a fresh opportunity. I should warn those in the latter group that while this freshman take on the formula has a ton of value, there are plenty of hiccups in its design. So in celebration of the remake's announcement, I'd like to offer my take on 10 things that could be improved in the remake. I'll go in a loose order from my simplest to implement to my more intense suggestions. Without further ado, let's jump right in. My first improvement would be to keep the atmosphere. If there's any one thing I can point to that Demon's Souls does better than its successors, it's atmosphere. A lot of this is grounded in the ethereal soundtrack, especially in places like the Nexus. There's also the echo ringing behind dialogue that creates an almost dreamlike state.
Oh, Mbasa.
The immersion provided by that state was amplified by the blurred effects on soul art, souls, and even light sources around the levels and characters. I assume that these blurry features weren't solely an artistic choice, but were also due to limitations of the time. From what we saw of the remake, the level of detail has improved to a nearly unbelievable degree. The shot they showed of Tower Knight makes him look like one of those $600 curated collectible figures that has every nook and cranny of his model crafted with meticulous precision. I am all for this graphical update. I love that remakes in the modern day are going far beyond what was expected of remasters even 5 years ago and are putting immense love and affection into these recreations. I just hope that as we gain detail, we don't lose the charm of what made the Demon's Souls dreamlike atmosphere feel unique. Ensuring that the principles behind its sound design are maintained will go a long way, as will maintaining the art direction. I have faith in Bluepoint to do it justice, so this isn't much of an improvement as it is a suggestion to maintain something that made the original great. My second improvement would be modified lizard design. If you've played any of the Dark Souls games, then you're familiar with crystal lizards. They serve as living caches of upgrade materials, with strategic approaches being needed. While they have no form of offense, they'll run away and disappear after a short time, which makes swift damage output key to claiming their treasures. Unlike Dark Souls, the crystal lizards in Demon's Souls have conditional spawn numbers. For every boss you kill in a particular world, every crystal lizard in that world gains another life. So if a world has 3 bosses, then a lizard will spawn a total of 4 times, including its original life. In Dark Souls, lizards that disappear will reappear if you reset the enemies using a bonfire or if you quit out and restart the game. In Demon's Souls, lizards that disappear, fall off the map, or aren't looted before an enemy kills you are gone permanently. If a lizard has 4 lives and you manage to loot it once, then die before looting the second, don't get to the 3rd one before it disappears, and the 4th one jumps off the map, you lose that lizard until your next playthrough. While this is unforgiving, the balance of multiple attempts at the same lizard as a reward for boss kills is appreciated. The problem is that certain lizards have exclusive upgrade materials. For example, in the Tower Elatria, there are 2 lizards that have a chance of dropping pure Moonlight Stone. The rate is affected by a number of complicated factors as it is, but between the 8 lives those 2 share, if you fail to get the pure stone, you can't get one until New Game Plus or a new playthrough altogether. This goes into the complicated stone upgrade system that predates Infusion through alternative stones that instead have specific custom upgrade paths for every every type of infusion. While that system is more confusing, it is a signature part of the Demon's Souls experience, and the way stones are divided into the levels is too integral to the way the game is designed. I also think that lizards are a crucial part of the experience as well. My suggestion for change would be to make their lives only decrease when they are properly looted. This gives you fair opportunities to get everything in a single playthrough as long as you maximize your probability through items and pure black world tendency. Even then, it may be harsh toward the small percentage of players screwed by probability out of a certain stone, so you could go even further to rubber band the drop rate each time you miss out on the rare stones, and make the final life a guaranteed perfect drop. Slaying that many lizards clearly indicates a deliberate effort on your end, so I think it's plenty fair to give a surefire reward. Speaking of deliberate efforts for surefire rewards, let's talk about the pure opposite in the classic trial of the pure Bladestone. The max stone for the deck scaling infusion, the pure Bladestone was an exclusive drop from two very tough dual katana skeletons. Tough challenge for an excellent reward is a hallmark of the series, but when that reward has a 0.5% drop rate, some balancing is in order. So my third improvement would be to raise the pure Bladestone drop rate. Imagine wanting to maximize a dex build and needing to farm this skeleton. Your pure Bladestone drop chance is 1 in 200. And sadly, that probability doesn't guarantee a stone after 200 kills, it just means every single time you kill one, those are your odds. That's still an absurd requirement when other, arguably more valuable stones can be obtained with relative ease. My suggestion would be to dramatically increase the drop rate from this skeleton to at least 10%, but only allow him to drop 1 stone per playthrough. Your alternative is the other skeleton, a red phantom variant that only appears in pure black world tendency. Defeating the skeleton should offer a guaranteed drop of the stone. I'm sure there would be some masochists out there that would love to see this legendary ordeal be preserved in the remake, but I say this is an opportunity to make up for a drop rate that should have been patched ages ago. My fourth improvement is to repurpose Stockpile Thomas. Of my suggestions, this one could be perhaps the most heretical for Demon's Souls fanatics. Look, I'm with you, I love Stockpile Thomas. His story of being a coward who left his family behind in favor of the safety of the Nexus, reflecting on how that was a mistake, and offering to bear the burdens of others, such as yourself, as a way to repent is touching and at the very least interesting. For me, he always brought a sense of calm when I would return to the Nexus to visit him. And believe me, you'd be paying him a lot of visits. The burden of all those stones isn't light, and Demon's Souls item burden made it so you couldn't bear their immense weight. Instead, you drop your load regularly all over Thomas's stockpile. Thanks to Demon's Souls' lack of in-level checkpoints, you'd be forced to dispose of items on the fly, or regularly return to the Nexus to relieve your over-encumbered state. This is one of those things that makes realistic sense, but is an inconvenience that I think is worth sacrificing realism for. FromSoft clearly agrees, since they scrapped this mechanic in every game since. Here's my suggestion. Get rid of item burden, but instead of sacrificing a great NPC along with it, give him a new purpose, one that fits his story perfectly. Leaving his wife and daughter to die like a coward could be considered a sinful act. Make the ironic twist of his story that his escape into the mysterious Nexus left him with the ability to forgive the sins of others, everyone but himself. This would be quite useful to the player since any hostile acts against NPCs in the original make them disagreeable for an entire playthrough. Even falling off the Nexus stairs onto an NPC accidentally can be enough to draw their ire. With key NPCs littered all over the place, it's a hefty and harsh penalty for new players that aren't used to games like this. The other Souls games have similar mechanics, so I think this change is a win-win. No item burden, and Stockpile Thomas keeps his value with an equivalent story that is debatably more twisted than the original. It would have to be balanced as a reset for character tendency to neutral, but that would be useful anyway. Because my fifth improvement would be to make tendency digestible. I could spend this entire video talking about the complexity of world tendency. That fact in and of itself is reason enough to make tendency more digestible for new players in game. To give you a description, keeping it simple, character tendency can be thought of as player karma. Killing player invaders and NPC Black Phantom shifts it toward white, while invading other players and killing friendly NPCs shifts it toward black. White character tendency increases your attack power in soul form, the form you take upon death when human. It also increases your attack power as a blue phantom helping other players. Black tendency reduces your HP in soul form, with it already being a smaller percentage of your total HP when human. It also increases your damage as an invader and unlocks a special NPC quest. World tendency, on the other hand, affects each world individually outside of your character. White world tendency makes enemies weaker, but decreases the souls gained and the value of items they drop. Black world tendency, on the other hand, makes enemies stronger, but they give rare items and more souls. Killing bosses shifts tendency to white, while dying in human form shifts it to black. Special NPCs can also be killed to shift tendencies in both directions, as well as defeating invading players shifting world tendency toward white. You also have to take online medians into account. Every time you log on, your tendency shifts toward the average of players online in that world, so keeping pure white or pure black tendency is tough online, a serious problem because there are exclusive world events for each. If this sounds troublesome and unforgiving, it is! Especially to new players who don't understand these completely underexplained mechanics. Standard convention would tell you that fighting in human form at max HP is best for new players, but dying in that form makes the game harder in a way that is difficult for inexperienced players to shift. It snowballs things against players who struggle. While this is brutal, it's a signature part of the Demon Souls experience. I have no problem with the concept of tendencies, but I do think they could use a bit of tweaking. First, the online median portion should be a toggled feature. That way it can help rubber band players struggling back toward white, but can be turned off for experienced players going for pure tendencies. My second suggested change is to add an in-game tendency NPC that helps explain all of this to you, and can help you get an easily determined and very clear check for your current tendency. As it stands, all you get is a screen with a couple of ambiguous lights, which sums up in a nutshell how much effort was put into helping players understand it. Two simple tweaks that would change things dramatically. Knowledge is power in these games as much as gaining combat skill, so please Bluepoint, give players that knowledge. My sixth suggested improvement would be to tweak magic damage. This improvement is much less complex on the surface than tendency. It's simple. Most enemies in Demon Souls are tissue paper in the face of magic damage. Getting certain items and spells early can make quick work of the game. You could say this is intended as an easier path, but I still think its damage could use some fine-tuning. I'm not necessarily saying nerf it across the board, rather that it should be balanced in a way that makes using spells valuable, but not the end-all be-all of damage in the game. Perhaps start by making fewer enemies weak to magic damage, but make spells take less mana to use so you can make it a more common element of your moment-to-moment arsenal. I have to admit that I don't have the best suggestion in mind myself, because I feel like kind of a buzzkill saying nerf magic. But I do think Demon Souls would be better with a little more balance in its power against standard weapons. Of all the things that need proper balance, the healing mechanic is by far the most in need of attention. Demon Souls healing is based around consumable grasses. Different grades of grass are increasingly rare, but heal more HP. The same system exists for magic in the form of spices, and both can be found in higher quantities in certain worlds. Since you can obtain them in unlimited quantities by farming enemies, you can effectively have unlimited health and mana as long as you farm and win each battle you encounter. This is the life gem system on steroids. It goes against one of my favorite hallmark features of the series, managing limited healing resources throughout a level. My suggestion is to have each archstone, the starting point within a section of a world, give you a set amount of standard grass. The lesser archstones can give you weaker grasses and spices, while the higher archstones give you more restorative variants. Each time you die, you go back to the archstone and lose your souls as usual, and you get the standard consumable amount of items replenished. As you go through the levels, you get the possibility of finding rare grasses and spices that are limited in number, so you have to make the difficult choice as to when they are best used. This adds a lot more strategy than farm and chow down like a fat cow, and it sure sounds a lot less mundane to me. The catch is that levels like 5-2 drain your life in an almost endless manner through poison. You could give a lot of extra standard grass, but I think this level is due for a revamp. If you hate areas like Blighttown, Black Gulch, and Farron Keep for stuffing you full of poison at every turn, just wait until you try out the Valley of Defilement second area with a level-wide, life-sucking swamp. One that makes you move at a snail's pace and removes your ability to roll. This area is anti-fun incarnate, and though the masochist in me appreciates the need to be clever and work around how brutal this level is, I would suggest removing the slow movement in the swamp, dropping Poison Lotus heals a bit more frequently, and increase the amount of enemies throughout the swamp to compensate. I wouldn't be against introducing a new enemy type that patrols the wide open, empty areas of the swamp to discourage you from taking an offbeat path, but offers a nice shortcut if you're up to the challenge of taking them out amidst the poison. There's plenty of ways to get it done, but no matter how they do it, I would love to see Bluepoint update 5.2 for the better. Making old staples better isn't all that would improve the remake. This reimagining of the original offers the opportunity to finally restore the broken 6th Archstone, the Land of the Giants. We've seen bits and pieces of conceptual footage for this scrapped area, but while faithfully remaking the original part should take priority, I'd love to see Bluepoint take the leap to putting their own mark on Demon Souls. Any suggestions beyond restoring it would be based on speculation of what I personally want it to be, but my requests aren't all that complex. Make it an enjoyable extension of the existing world that follows the same design principles. Whether or not they can accomplish this is to be seen, and if they genuinely were to believe they couldn't deliver, then leave it on the cutting room floor, but I would at least love to see them give it a shot. My 10th and final improvement would be to build upon boss battles. As I am sure you can guess, bosses are my favorite element in the Souls games. No matter how many times I play, they are the single part of this series that never grows tiresome. Demon Souls boasts some of the most creative ideas in this entire continuum, but with bold imagination comes a lot of hit or miss execution, especially when you consider technical limitations that held back that ambition. Take a boss like Adjudicator for example. He's created as a mass of fat in a layered arena to distract and confuse the player amidst the chaos, an intentional distraction from his very vulnerable weak point. Smack his wound and he falls, letting you annihilate him. This was fine and dandy back in the day when this was going to be one of the first bosses players would likely face in the entire series, but with many series veterans having this combat style mastered from the other games, you will likely dunk on this dude without much thought whatsoever. His attacks are some of the slowest in the series, making them a joke to evade. I'm not suggesting they dramatically alter each boss, but I would love to see them build upon what's already there. Give Adjudicator a more diverse and speedy move pool. Make the optional dragon battles take place in their nest in 1-1, rewarding players by removing their environmental nuisance if you're willing to face them head on, instead of having to shoot hundreds of arrows at them. Make Dirty Colossus and Leechmonger a bit less of duds that feel like rushed afterthoughts for the endgame. And when it comes to Dragon God, maybe you do just need to rework the entire fight. Also probably a good idea to improve boss AI across the board since it's a bit potato relative to the later entries. There are far too many exploits you can use for nearly the whole roster. There are minor and major ways they could all be improved upon, but I will admit it would be hard to change a lot of them without ruining their purpose entirely. Which is why I listed it as my final suggestion. Implementing changes like this properly without ruining the scope of the original would be a challenge more difficult than beating the game itself. Whether they can make it happen or not, I know I'll be ready to relive and re-rank the bosses when the time to adventure through Boletaria comes once again. Despite any changes I may hope for, a pure remake of the original would still be immensely enjoyable. I hope you're all excited for whatever Bluepoint brings to the table, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Until then, I encourage you to subscribe and check out some of the videos on your screen to share in more gaming moments with me. And of course, I want to thank you for watching today, much love to you, and I'll see you in the next video.